longer. The beautiful girl looked at the man groveling at her feet, and her shrill laugh grated at him. How had things ended up like this? Zack thought as hard as he could. No matter how one tried to cloak it in politeness, the world still ran on the principle of the strong feeding on the weak. It was utterly natural for the strong to oppress the weak. After all, Zack had been doing so himself. However, was it right for the strong to go so far and do so much? Of course not. He could not accept their cruel methods of killing. Then, what should he do? The enemy was simply choosing not to attack him, so if he tried to flee, they would probably do something to him to make him not dare to escape again. Something painful and nausea-inducing, for instance. Zack felt for his hidden short sword through his clothing. Why was his sword so small? How could it possibly stand up to these monsters, which could twist off men's arms so effortlessly? What had he done to them? He had never thought of doing anything to those monsters. Zack hugged himself, as though trying to conceal his presence. The rhythmic grinding of his teeth suddenly struck him as extremely grating. What would happen if those monsters heard it, and went after him? He tried to stop himself, but his teeth would not listen to him, and continued grinding. Speaking of which, what kind of people were they? Zack did not recognize them at all. And just as he thought about that, Zack-san, come this way. A gentle, dulcet voice came from behind him, completely at odds with the cruel scenery in front of him. Zack looked fearfully behind himself, and saw his employer standing before him. Her expression did not match the haughty and argumentative heiress that he knew her for. If he had been calm enough, he might have felt suspicious about this, but Zack, who had been driven into confusion by this bizarre world and the stink of blood, had no energy left to suspect anything. What are those monsters? Zack wailed, his voice cracking, at Solution, the moneyed daughter of nobility, who knew nothing of the world. Why didn't you tell me there were monsters like these around? Indeed. If he had known about this beforehand, things would not have ended up like this. The bitch before him was responsible for the frightening scene before him. Don't keep quiet, speak up. Let's get this straight, this is all your fault. Anxiety and terror combined to impel him forward, and a furious Zack could no longer bear it. He reached out to grab Solution by the collar, and roughly shook her. I understand. Please follow me. Are you going to save me? No, I simply wish to take this last chance to enjoy you. An ivory pale hand, cold as ice, gripped Zack's own, and then Solution stepped forward, pulling him away. Even though I already have permission, Sabas-sama does not like this sort of thing, so I would rather do it at a distance. He had no idea what she was talking about. However, Zack felt that if he alone was being led away, there might be a chance that he could survive. Zack pretended not to hear the horrific screams from behind him. That could not be helped. Zack was too weak. He could not possibly save those comrades of his, which were supposed to be stronger than him. Please don't be too excited. If possible, I'd like you to be gentle with me. It would make me very happy. Behind the coach, Solution spoke softly to Zack as she waved him over, then reached behind her back, as though to undo her dress. As Zack saw this, he stared with his mouth open. What was this woman up to? Zack looked at Solution like she was some sort of exotic creature. Solution's hands had not stopped at all during all this, and so a thoroughly confused Zack asked, what are you doing? What do you think? With that, Solution easily peeled off her figure-hugging bodice. As though waiting for that moment, her tightly bound breasts sprang forth. They were firm, springy globes, and her skin seemed vaguely translucent under the moonlight. Zack gulped at the sight before him. Please. Solution thrust her chest out, as though inviting him to fondle her. What do you want me to? Zack had forgotten himself as he fixated on the body before him. She was beautiful. This was the most beautiful female body Zack had ever seen in his life. Of all the girls Zack had partaken of, the most beautiful was one who belonged to a caravan which he had attacked. However, by the time it was Zack's turn, the girl was exhausted. She lay motionless, only spreading her legs like a frog. Still, it had not detracted from her beauty in the least. However, the girl before him was even more beautiful, and she was not unresponsive like the other girl. Desire lit the flames of Zack's lust, and the heat in his lower body began spreading out from his crotch. Panting like a dog, he reached out for Solution's body. It felt like silk. Zack could no longer hold himself back, and he seized the more shapely of Solution's breasts. And then his entire hand sank into her. Zack thought for a moment that her body was so soft that it felt as though his entire hand had gone into her. But as he looked at his hand, he realized that this was not the case. Zack's hand had literally sunk into Solution's body. What the hell is this? Zack screamed in surprise and tried to pull his hand back, but he could not budge it. Not only did it not move back, it was sucked further in. It seemed as though there were many writhing tentacles inside Solution, which had latched onto Zack's hand and were drawing him in. Solution's beautiful face did not change even under these strange circumstances. She simply watched Zack in silence. Her expression was that of a scientist watching as a lab animal was injected with some lethal chemical, blending a cold dispassion with curiosity and excitement. Oi, stop. Let go of me. Zack balled up his other hand into a fist and swung with all his strength at Solution's pretty face. Once, twice, 3 times, Zack swung at full force, punching heavily, and not caring if his fist was injured. That beautiful face remained unmoved despite a grown man striking it with all his might. It did not seem to hurt her at all. Instead, Zack was frightened by what he felt when he hit her. That sensation was like punching a soft, filled water skin. Under normal circumstances, there should have been some resistance to his punch, but he did not feel that he had struck bone at all. This was not how punching a human being should have felt. The unreal scene of carnage behind him, forgotten due to his excitement, suddenly flashed through his mind. Zack choked back the impulse to scream. Eventually, it dawned upon him. The woman baring her chest to him before his eyes was also a monster. Did you finally realize it? Then, let's begin the fun part, shall we? As she said that, a pain like the stabbing of hundreds of needles radiated from his stuck hand. Aha! I am now dissolving your hand. Zack could not understand these cold words through the agony which gripped him. This was no longer in the realm of his comprehension. The truth is, I deeply enjoy watching things dissolve. Therefore, I felt it was a happy coincidence that you wanted to be inside me, Zack-san. Guy. You damn monster, go to hell. Fighting back the pain, Zack drew his short sword as he shouted at her. Then, he forcefully stabbed at Solution's pretty face, and her body quivered. Take that. However, Zack immediately realized that he had been far too hasty. What good would stabbing the surface of a lake with a short sword do? It would merely make more ripples, and that was what happened. Solution turned to look at Zack, still with a short sword sticking out of her face, and then she gently said, I'm sorry, but I am resistant to physical attacks, so a blow like that cannot harm me. Then, I shall dissolve it. An acrid stench seared his nose, and within seconds, the short sword fell from Solution's face, its blade half dissolved. Just as she had said, her beautiful, unmarred visage lay before his eyes. Who the hell are you? The agony in his hand was slowly spreading up the rest of his arm, but the fear of impending death overrode his pain, and Zack asked his question even as tears brimmed in his eyes. However, the answer made him want to stuff his fingers in his ears to deny it. I am a predatory slime. Since time is limited, I will need to swallow you up. Zack's arms were pulled into Solution's body. So forceful was the suction that Zack could not resist it, even if he were capable of doing so. Stop, 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 stop. Spare me, spare me, spare me please. Zack cried and begged, but the force drawing him into Solution's body was still very strong, enough that a human being could not resist it. His arms, his shoulders, all of them were steadily devoured by her body. Lilia. With that last scream, Zack's face was sucked into Solution's body. And so Zack was swallowed whole, as though he were a python's prey. Diamond suit after a few minutes had passed, there were no longer any survivors. The place was one which reeked of a foul stench. No, one man still survived. He worked his tongue as he squatted near Shaltir's feet, licking her high-heeled shoes clean of the brain matter, which had spattered them after she had playfully crushed a bandit's skull underfoot. Shaltir looked on her now cleaned heels in satisfaction. Well done. Then, in accordance with our agreement, I shall not take your life. The man, his frightened features scrunched up into a ball, looked up at Shaltir with a grateful expression on his face and kowtowed repeatedly to her in thanks. Shaltir looked lovingly upon this puppy-like man, and then snapped her fingers. Drain him. Once the two vampire brides came to his side, the man finally understood what those words meant. The undead are technically still alive, so I was not lying to you. The vampire brides bit eagerly into him, and Shaltir looked out of the corner of her eye at the man as his life force was drained away from him. She turned to Solution, who was rearranging her messed-up collar as she emerged from the direction of the coach, and said, "Oh, is it over?" "Yes, I was quite satisfied. I am profoundly grateful to you for this. No need to stand on ceremony. We're all servants of Nazareth, after all. Speaking of which, did that human have fun? He is currently enjoying himself. Would you like to see? May I? Then, let me have a quick look." A man's arm suddenly erupted from Solution's face, accompanied by a vile stench that stung the nose. The source of the odor was that arm. Its muscles were badly dissolved after being exposed to powerful acid, and the reaction of the blood from within the muscles, and the acid created gouts of thick fumes. The arm thrashed about like it had emerged from the surface of a lake, desperately struggling to find a grip on something. Juices flowed from the exposed muscles with every twitch. My apologies, I did not know he was still so full of energy. Solution was a bizarre sight as she bowed in apology, what with the arm sticking out of her face. She then shoved the arm back into her face, smiling after the flailing arm had been completely swallowed up once more. It's amazing how you can swallow a man whole, and look as though nothing had happened. Thank you for your praise. It is not outwardly visible because the interior of my body was originally empty. In addition, I have always been a creature like this, so this must be the effect of some sort of specialized magic. Oh this might be a bit nosy of me, but when will he die? I could secrete a stronger acid to kill him immediately if you wish, but since a human who wishes to enter me is a rare occasion, I would like to let him enjoy it for an entire day. I didn't hear any screams. Did you corrode him with acid? No, I did not. If I dissolved his throat with acid, he might suffocate due to being unable to breathe. Therefore, I inserted part of my body into him to suppress his voice, and it also has the effect of preventing bad smells. I'm quite impressed by your attitude of paying close attention to your toys, and playing with them for as long as possible. Incidentally, can you corrode specific places with your acids? For instance, only corroding a certain place. Indeed, that is an easy task to accomplish. The proof of that are the scrolls, potions, and other magic items within my body, and the fact that those items are intact. I could move freely even if I were to take your body within mine, Shaltir-sama, though I would have to ask that you did not move too much. Predatory slimes sure are amazing, Do you want to play together next time? That will be fine. Although, where do you plan to get the toys from? Shaltir smiled happily when she found Solution looking at the vampire brides behind her. Those girls aren't half bad, but I want to wait until someone tries to invade us, and then plead with Ain-sama to give them to us. Then, please do not forget about my share. I would like to swallow them up to the chest and expose the rest of them. That ought to be quite interesting as well. Not bad. Do you get along with that interrogator? Neuronist-sama? The Special Intelligence Gathering Officer? Regretfully, I cannot understand that person's aesthetic sense. Shaltir planned to continue, but she was interrupted by a voice behind her. Solution, I've finished up over here. We can move out any time, Sabas called out from the driver's seat, having replaced the reins. Understood, I'm coming. Then, Shaltir-sama, though it pains my heart to leave, allow me to bid you farewell. Shaltir looked to Solution as she hurried back into the coach, and then to Sabaz, who was seated at the driver's place. Then, we shall part ways for the time being, Sabaz. Is that so? Does this mean you have already discovered the bandits' hideout? Indeed. We shall invade them afterwards and look for any interesting people who might know something which would please Ain-sama. Otherwise this would have all been a waste of time. I see. It was a pleasure traveling with you, Shaltir-sama. Thank you for that. Let us meet again in Nazarick. Oh, we'll be off, then. Clone. New paste.